First people talking in the chat. Perfect.
Oh, hear you perfect. Awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Let's
All
just
right. Well, let's just wait, I guess, until a few more people join the call. Maybe if you can just, guys, tell us where you're from in the chat. Make sure that the chat's working properly again.
feel free to let us know where you guys from. All right, so so good to see you, everybody. Let me introduce Karl here. It's a special person. Karl used to be a top one US freelancer for robotic process automation and UiPath development. So we have a pretty smart person with us to talk.
And this is Filip Nasiadko, co-owner of Flobotics, and a pretty cool guy also.
Yeah, here is a welcome on the presentation. Hello and welcome on the presentation about robotic process automation for medical billing and the healthcare industry. So here's going to be our slides. We're going to talk you through some most important things about what you can learn about robotic process automation. And after 35-40 minutes, we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you're curious about something, feel free to ask questions here. At the end, we're going to go through hopefully all of them and answer your questions. Use Karl's time here as much as you can. He's a really big source of knowledge, so make sure you just take advantage of it.
All right, sounds good. Let's do a deep dive in.
Alrighty. Do you guys see the presentation? I just want to make sure everything is visible. Can you see a nice title of Flobotics and how to handle 6 times more patients without hiring a single person? Please give me a thumbs up.
All right, that's a thumbs up. Oh no. Perfect. All right.
Perfect.
Let's go. All right. I think we already introduced ourselves, so let's get right into our first example.
All right. First of all, we'd like to start with a nice story of a medical billing company, an innovative startup from LA that wanted to revolutionize medical billing operations in the US. They stumbled upon 3 major problems. So the 3 major problems were labor shortage. So every time they had they signed up a big client, they had to do a lot of work. They had to hire a lot of people. They had to train them. So it took them 2-3 months to be even able to provide the services. Second big problem was expensive mistakes. So especially the newly hired people were making mistakes, but even the most experienced ones had these problems because after all, humans are humans and they do make mistakes.
They do mistakes, yes.
The last one was long revenue cycle that caused bad cash flow and missed deadlines.
So let's go and talk about what companies and MBC used to do to tackle these problems. So most of the time they would just hire more people. This is the general thought in the population: more people, more processing power. Hiring offshore, increase salaries and benefits to retain people, re-verifying info and claims, more training, hiring more qualified people. But some of these things just don't work. They're difficult. You can't scale it properly, and it's just a long process.
And then MBC surprised everybody because having to hire 15 more people, they did something totally different. They did something kind of weird. They hired just one person.
One guy to do all those tasks?
And I want you to meet Paul. This is who they hired. They just hired Paul, Karl.
He looks like a pretty shy guy.
It is a pretty shy guy, but it's an amazing person. He was straight out of high school. He had a great attitude. He wanted to really work hard for MBC. He can do basically anything you can teach me within 1 week. He's extremely focused on detail. Can you imagine, Karl? He's even better than you with this. He never makes mistakes.
Not possible. Not possible.
He's a very honest person, so he wouldn't lie to you. He loves computer work. He's just a little shy, as you can see. He wouldn't be talking to your customers.
Looks like a shy guy.
But Paul, on top of that, has superpowers. Can you imagine?
Wow,
real superpowers. So first of all, Paul, he works 60 times faster than his colleagues.
How is that even possible?
Right? And on top of that, he never sleeps, works 24/7, never takes coffee breaks, never complains, not even about his bosses.
Impossible.
Right? Never gets bored. Even if he works on the most boring stuff, he never gets bored. Once he learns, he always remembers and he always does it right. He never makes mistakes.
Well, can we look at maybe some of Paul's work?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. So here's a little example of how quick Paul actually was. Here we see a short process that was done by his colleagues in 15 minutes, but don't blink here too much because he's just done. After 6 seconds, he's basically done with it. He fills in a lot of data. He takes them from database. He does everything. See, he's already done a second time. His friend would take 30 minutes. How is this even possible?
I have no idea. That's fine.
And that's not even it. That's
not it.
Paul.
That's not it. Okay.
Most importantly, Paul can clone himself. And all of the clones wanted to work in NBC Global. Can you believe that?
That's a pretty cool person.
And by now, I'm sure you don't believe even Paul existed. You think we're just playing around with you. But actually, that was 100% true. Simply, Paul is just a robot.
Makes sense. To clarify, he's a software robot. So not an actual R2-D2 robot that moves around, has metal parts. He's a script that's written on a computer that automates your tasks.
And let's see and hear what robots like Paul are capable of doing.
Here is an example of EHR automation with RPA. First, a patient profile in Simple Practice EHR is created automatically in seconds. Poof, done. Now we need to schedule some appointments. RPA bot, using data from an external source, spreadsheet or CRM, is filling up the calendar in the blink of an eye. Let's see that again and compare to the manual process. Another customer is being automatically registered, and the whole process repeats itself. Everything is done swiftly, with a 0% margin of error. Information about new appointments is being automatically shared with the patient and the healthcare provider. In just a few minutes, the whole month of visits is scheduled, with all patients' data being introduced to the EHR. In the meantime, a manual worker only managed to create a profile of one patient. And that is RPA in action. This is just one of the many processes that can be streamlined in the medical industry. Robotic process automation can be leveraged to automate medical billing data entry and processing, healthcare providers' license and NPI data verification, patient's eligibility check, insurance claims submission and processing, medical coding operations, invoice creation and processing, report generation, and more. Get in touch with us and learn how RPA can be applied.
Yeah, maybe let's come back to the free consultation at the end of the show. So as you see, Paul was a robot, and as robots are capable of doing many things. But let's even talk what robots are. Are these guys like the one on the picture?
Like I said, yeah, they're not R2-D2 robots. Basically, they're just scripting code on your computer. So RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. And this is a type of automation basically bundled together, a software technology that makes it easier to build, deploy, and manage these so-called software robots. And what they do, or one of the main things they do, is they mimic and emulate what humans do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you may think robots are some magical creatures that come to your company and can do your job better. Well, it's not exactly true. There is not somebody who knows everything. So robots aren't magic. There is many things they can't do. Can you guide us through them, Karl?
Yeah, there's a lot of things robots can't do. Just to name a few things, they can't take out your trash, teach you how to dance, have a difficult conversation with your mother, correctly predict Powerball numbers. I need one of those guys.
Yeah.
And many, many other things.
All right, Karl, jokes aside, but do you actually remember something that was a real case that you had to say to your client, no, robots won't be able to do it?
Yeah. So let's take a real life example of something that's not necessarily good for RPA by itself. So we have an insurance company, and what this insurance company does, it pays out money for accidents, car accidents. And an expert at the insurance company gets pictures from a mechanic or a body shop of a car and of the estimated price that is given by that body shop. Now, this expert with years of experience looking at pictures like this verifies if this price estimate matches the damage. This would be extremely difficult for the robot unless we added some sort of AI module. But it's not necessarily a type of thing that's good for first, second, third process at a company.
Absolutely. Well, there are problems that robots can't simply help, but after helping 7 healthcare companies, we saw a little pattern. And that's something that it's really important for us to know, because we saw there is an reoccurring 3 problems. Every time the same 3 ones: expensive mistakes that lead to lost business, long revenue cycle that causes bad cash flow, and the third, the great resignation and the employee market that basically makes scaling your business impossible. So please, if you can relate to any of these 3 problems, just write, oh, 1 is my problem. Just simply write a 1 digit, or 2 or 3. But if your problems, something that you struggle with on the regular basis, is something totally different, write 4. And my problem is something, so we can see if we talk about something you can actually relate to. Maybe your problems have to go to the back of the magical one that the robots can't do.
Exactly. So let's go over these, Philip.
Let's go and see. I'm glad you guys can relate to some of them. First, the expensive mistakes, something that basically seems pretty natural. It's just simply reoccurring errors in billing. It's incorrect claims. And according to American Medical Association, 10% of all of the claims are wrong. And lost business because 60%, according to the same source, of denials are never reapplied. What's the solution to it, Karl?
Well, software robots. This can help. They never make mistakes. As hard as that is to believe, they either do it right or they stop and wait for a human to correct the mistake.
I see 2 people talking about number 2, and that's also something that robots actually helped us before. So it seems in medical billing and also in a healthcare industry as the whole, there are waves of a lot of work, and that's a lot of work in short time. And what it causes cash flow problems and also missed deadlines. And a lot of these things come from just waiting to get paid until your claims are resolved. And here the solution, Karl?
The solution is software bots. We can work 24/7, claims submitted almost immediately. They can be working nonstop. And robots work 6 to 100 times faster than humans. These are from our personal statistics on case studies that we've done from our own robots. And robots don't really make mistakes. If there's mistakes, it's based on the analysis being done wrong before. How we code the robot is exactly how it works.
And our clients very often mention that the mistakes are something that takes the most time. So going through them faster, just make them faster to get their money. The third problem.
I'm sorry. And no communication bottlenecks. So how revenue cycles are made now is there is logistics and communication between steps, from people to people, to machines, to applications, back to people. If you have software robots doing everything, well, then that communication is much faster. There's no time wasted in logistics and getting from one point to the next.
Absolutely. So the third problem, something much more general, doesn't only touch the healthcare, it touches probably the whole American market at this point, is the so-called Great Resignation and the employee market. Labor shortage on the US market is visible everywhere. It seems that we have to pay more for the same quality or even sometimes worse quality of workers. And the quick turnover makes hiring processes and training processes much more expensive. Solution to it? Who would think?
Probably software robots. So once taught, the bot will always execute the job right. We don't have to relearn the next bots because we can just basically duplicate them. So they'll never forget the job. And easier to scale operations, just like I just mentioned in the last sentence. We can go from 1 robot to 2 robots to 3 robots, basically copy paste. It's really easy. And a robot, if he has 100 tasks to do, and the next day he has 200, and the next day he has 300, that's no difference for him. He goes into the application or whatever it is, he sees the list of things he has to do, and he executes all of them.
All right. But most importantly, at least something that excites me most about this job is we actually see smiles, joy, and relief on faces of our clients. I love hearing, my God, I love that I did this for the last time in my life because I was the most hated and disliked part, the most boring part of my job. And then people really started to love what they do. So when all of the boring work is given to robots, all the interesting stuff is left for the people. And then maybe as one of our clients, you can start yoga classes, even if you thought you don't have time for anything, just a couple of weeks ago. And here's another great example. Let's talk concrete data. Let's talk examples.
ROI and data from the last automation we did actually for Pain Treatment Centers of America. We're going to show you a little video about labs claim processing to insurance companies.
Here it is.
There's no voice over here, so I'll just tell you a little bit of what's going on. It's pretty boring. It's just going in this application. It's checking what insurance company it is, what doctor it is, if it's Medicaid or not Medicaid. It's basically clicking some stuff, copying, pasting some stuff. For certain codes, we delete for certain companies, we delete the 8 codes at the end. Certain companies, we delete the 6 codes at the end. But it's the same process over and over and over and over again. Actually, 2,000 of these a day, PTCOA gets.
And that seems to be only the lab claims, right?
That's only the lab claims. We haven't even started on different type of claims. Where'd the presentation go? It disappeared. Oh, there it is. All right.
Here it is. So let's talk numbers because that's probably what interests our audience the most.
Exactly. So 2,000 of these lab claims a day. They have 4 people working full time, 4 shifts of 10 hours, Monday through Thursday, 4 people. So this robot does all of this work in right around 21 hours. It's just one robot, 21 hours, but 4 FTE saved. It was a very short robot because the process isn't so complicated. So it was $5,000 consulting fee. License cost for the year, since they went with UiPath, was right around $14,000. And they saw a complete return of investment in 23 working days.
That's crazy.
23 working days, giving them a total savings of $181,000 a year. And also remembering, this is the first robot we've done. We have 3-4 more in the pipeline.
If you just think that's only the beginning, it's mind-blowing. So it seems that everything we do changes, and do you think we should too?
We should always change and adapt. But it seems like some things we don't want to change. For example, I don't know, if we don't really use a paper and pen anymore to do long division. I can't remember the last time I did that. We use calculators. And people used to use calculators to calculate large sums of numbers and take the average of them. But no one does that anymore. People use Excel. But why use Excel when you have even better programs for accounting or data analysis? So I think we should always evolve and do the things that we do in a different way. But we really don't change the way we do boring, mundane tasks. Humans aren't really made to sit and do the same thing every day, the same thing every day. This is just so lame, I guess.
Yeah, for sure it is. For sure it is.
All right.
All right. We often hear that robots are compared to offshoring. People say, okay, and that it's not actually our problem anymore because we started to hire offshore. How they compare? How these two solutions compare?
Well, pluses and minuses to everything, really. There are a lot of companies that offer very cheap data entry services, but there are a few problems with this. Robots are just intrinsically more reliable than humans. We've seen in the past with COVID and political tensions between companies, natural disasters, that sometimes we can't rely on humans. And, it might be fine if it happens once, but it could happen that once when you really need it the most. There are also cultural differences, language barriers, and time zone differences. It's always more difficult talking with people on the other side of the world, even if the language is English, even if what is said is understood. Maybe some things are just assumed and not correct because we have different facial expressions, different. I guess some cultures are outgoing, some aren't, and so.
All right, so I have a question
lost in translation.
Okay, I have a question here. If people on the other side of the globe are so different, aren't robots even more different from us?
They're super different. But the thing is, we don't really communicate with robots. So how automation usually works is you have one analyst and one developer in the most simple cases. The analyst is a process expert. He is an expert in talking to managers and process experts in companies to map out your processes, to understand your needs and kind of tailor the robot to you, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
So, yep. All right. And it's easier to scale. So I mentioned this before, and I'll mention it a lot. You can multiply robots or drop off the face of the earth like this, basically. So we can scale from one robot to an army of robots or an army of robots to 10 robots, basically overnight.
All right, got you.
And it's kind of hard with a team. If you have 10 people,
you don't want to fire and hire them.
Hire or logistics. 10 to 20 people. You have to train those people now. 10 to 20 to 40. A lot of things are gonna get kind of just lost in explaining stuff.
Gotcha. So what about safety of data?
And this is another one, also important. When you have software bots, you have everything in your environment. So basically the robot runs on a virtual computer in your server somewhere in your IT infrastructure. So there's no really way of data getting lost, data getting into the wrong hands. Everything stays with you. Humans just are intrinsically, we make errors, either on accident or deliberately. We make errors, which can lead to problems.
Yeah, I guess also robots don't have really even interest of stealing or even seeing your data, because why would they?
I haven't met one yet. Maybe they exist. I haven't met one.
All right, so let's talk about what RPA is capable of doing.
I think. Listen, I think you should explain this in layman's terms. You're the non-technical guy.
All right.
Maybe you can tell us what RPA is capable of doing.
All right, so let's see. It seems like RPA and robots we write are very good at pulling information from update and process, emails, Excel sheet, EHR systems, databases, and CRMs. What about patient documents, Karl?
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. And depending on what type they are, it could be easy, it could be more difficult, because we have PDFs, we have texts, we text files, we have images, we have scans. So there are a lot of solutions to tackle mostly file you can throw at us.
All right, the action of things that robots can do is actually pretty long, and I'm gonna try to make it
In one breath.
exactly. Let's try. Let's try if I
I'm
can.
gonna clap and make some tempo for you. All right.
So it's copying, pasting, clicking, checking, moving, downloading, sending, uploading, deleting, renaming, modifying, securing, encrypting, zipping, formatting, unpacking, reporting, searching, scraping, logging, notifying, merging, displaying, validating.
Awesome. We're gonna make an awesome rap song out of that.
So it is kind of overwhelming. It's kind of overwhelming of how many things it actually can do, right? So I will. Let me just come back to my favorite example, to our dear friend, to Paul.
Paul's an awesome guy. Right?
It is an awesome guy. He's my favorite guy, actually. Well, everything you can teach to Paul. Imagine you have a really smart intern, someone just out of high school who really is motivated to learn and to work in your company. And everything you can teach him in a week, you can teach to a robot, which is true in 90% of the cases.
90% of cases,
right?
Yeah.
But this helped me a lot to understand what robots are capable of doing, and I hope this will do too. But another question I want to ask you, Karl, what about different softwares? How does it work? Can actually robot work for different softwares, or it has to be a specific software? What's the limitation in terms of working on different software?
Well, no, all applications are just written code underneath, whether they be written in Java or .NET or a dozen other languages. What we see is not what the robot sees. The robot sees code, and it's very easy for him to know where are text boxes and where to read things and where to input things. So here we have four
EHRs.
4 EHRs. Yeah. So there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. I have no idea what's going on.
We're having claims processed. We're having patients registered. We're having appointments scheduled. So a lot of things are happening, all in completely different softwares from different vendors. So it doesn't really matter what the technology is. It doesn't really matter what you're doing on the screen. We can most likely automate it.
All right, let's get back to our presentation. I think it's a little overwhelming looking at all of these robots working at the same time. So let's talk about, it seems like robots can almost do anything. So let's think how to choose a good process for automation, Karl, because it seems like it can do almost everything. So how do I choose a right process to automate? What do I start with?
Well, we like to pick the processes that have the most bang for the buck for the client. That makes sense, right? So high volume, easy decision, automations. We use this just to make it easy. We use this, let's say, 3x3 grid and kind of categorize 2 input methods. Complexity. So how complex is the decision making? Is it simple? Is it medium? Is it difficult? And then input data. Is it structured, like databases in Excel? Is it patterned, like text files and PDFs? Or is it unstructured, like raw data, text messages, chat text, and emails?
All right, but do you say it's all of these are possible to do, or how does that work?
The green ones, the ones that are the high ROI. This is what we want to do for our customers first, so they right away get their money back. Right away, they save money so they can invest more in RPA, more in automation,
or invest in anything else they want.
Exactly. Exactly. Then the yellow, and then the red. The red are difficult, more difficult to do. The ROI is a little less, but it could be a pain point. It could be a pain point for a customer, and they might really want to do it. So it just depends, again, on use cases.
Well, it seems also that things that were impossible 2-3 years ago now are very possible, and the technology evolves so quickly.
Keeps evolving. Stuff that wasn't possible 2 years now is easy. 2 years ago is easy now. Yeah. And the stuff that I think, oh man, this
impossible. It's probably going to be super easy in 2-3 years,
in 2-3
right?
years is going to be
so
easy.
It seems like technology is not a barrier anymore. It's just the more complex and complicated thing you want to automate, it costs more. So we can't avoid to talk money. So let's just talk money.
All right, let's talk money, because this is where people what people want to know sometimes. All right, so license costs, depending on what type of solution you choose for, let's say, medium, complexity is not important here. $0 to $15,000 a year.
All right, zero. It's a good number, you know.
Yeah, it's a good.
Everybody
it's a
wants
good
to
number.
pay zero. When zero applies, Karl?
Zero applies to one-offs, 1, 2 automations that can be easily written with Python, Selenium, an easy scripting language that don't need a lot of overhead. But if a company wants to do, let's say, 10 automations, well, then there should be a control room, communication going from the control room to the robots, transaction histories, outcome statistics, and this is when we would pick an automation platform like UiPath or one of the other popular ones.
All right. What more costs? Consulting costs.
Consulting costs, $5,000 to $10,000 for easy to medium complexity robot.
So it kind of seemed like the answer is it depends, right?
It depends. Everything in consulting depends, exactly. But we have very transparent per hour model of consulting.
So a company, before automating, they would know how much they would pay for a.
Exactly. What we do is we go over the automation and we estimate it with the customer, and we tell them it's going to be around this much.
All right.
Give or take 10%.
All right. The third part of the cost?
It's infrastructure. These are the smaller costs, depending on what a company already has. But this could be firewalls or virtual machines to actually run the robots.
And the last one is, what about
support and maintenance?
Support and maintenance. So how does that work? Like, do I, just tell me how this works.
So it depends on the robots you build. If you have simple robots and if they're built good, almost nothing support costs, because I've had automations run for 3 years without anything happening, actually.
You must be good, buddy.
Don't try it. And for more complex solutions, they can get pretty complex. Reporting and analysis and communications, logistics between various applications, databases. So, the support, upkeep, and bug fixing can, be extensive.
All right. Okay, so probably an important question, if anything, that we have already said before might be, how do I even start? Like, what do I start with?
All right, so there are a lot of ways to start an automation journey. Depends if the company wants, a center of excellence of their own, if they want to code by themselves, if they want to learn, or if they just want to outsource anything. We have 2 of our favorite models. We'll just call it, just to make it easy, the big and small way. So here's the big way, and let's automate everything approach.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we pick a department or the entire company if the company is small enough. So let's say the finance company, for example, or department. What we do next is map all the processes. So an analyst would talk with people that know the processes, process experts, managers, and they would kind of make a map of all the tasks and just map everything out. Next, what we do is kind of streamline the processes that already exist. Robots don't necessarily work like humans. Humans are a little inefficient sometimes. So it's always beneficial before doing some automations just to move things around and make them more efficient and streamlined. Then we would categorize and prioritize tasks for automation based on ROI. So that chart I talked earlier when Philip asked me what processes we pick first, we throw everything in this chart, more or less, and we kind of make a pipeline. So a pipeline is just a prioritized list of what we automate first based on ROI and customer needs. Make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So do I finally start automating then?
Oh yeah, and that's the next step.
I'm probably not the most patient person. So I really wanted to get to automation.
Yeah, and then we just automate. All right.
All right. That's why I'm so impatient that I prefer the other approach. And the other approach is start small. I I don't think any of these approaches are worse or better, but it's just my personal preference to just start with talking to a consulting company about 2-3 processes that you think can be automated, because many of you have really good intuition of what is good or what is bad to automate. Then we choose one process with the best estimated ROI. So out of these 3, we don't analyze hundreds of them. We just analyze 3.
Makes sense.
And then
speeds up the process, actually.
Exactly. And you can have the first ROI after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, so very quickly from the very first contact. And then we automate it simply, easily, and that's a little loop. So from here on, you can start again, get another and another process, or move to the big approach. So even some big companies with a started with this approach and then end up having a portfolio of many robots. And here we're slowly going to the end of explaining to you the little guidance of how you can start your automation process. But we heard that there is no good webinar without
free stuff.
Free stuff. Who doesn't like free stuff? We love to, right, Karl?
Of course.
So our idea is to give you as a gift 5 for the first 5 people who write to info@phlebotics.io a free audit of your operations and automate it to just audit and see your potentials.
Oh, we're gonna change it to and. We're gonna do this and that.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
You want to do that?
It says or, but you said and. But let's do and.
All right, and let's do and. Karl is generous today, and up to 2,000 worth of free development. So basically,
sometimes it's enough. It's enough to make a small POC. So if you show us an automation that you would want to automate, we can actually automate a portion of it to show you how fast we can do it and how it actually looks, like the speed of it compared to a human.
All right. So now the stage is yours. Now, feel free to ask any questions in the chat below. We checked if it works. Go ahead. You can also change it to Q&A mode if you feel fancy. And then Mike, who's the host of this webinar, can go through them and choose one. So feel free. Are bots HIPAA compliant?
Yeah.
Brian, this is a great question. Thank you for it. And I have no idea how to answer this, but I really hope, Karl.
Yeah, bots are HIPAA compliant. So how bots are organized is really nothing leaves the computer that it's working on. And the computer is most likely in the client's environment. If not in the client's environment, like some other AWS, Azure solution with firewalls, with protection. So, it does everything on the computer as a human would, not sending anything outside of the environment.
There is a lot of interesting questions here. It's how long does it take to implement?
Could you send these example videos after the webinar? Of course.
Let's read the first one from Sarah. How long does it take to implement a HOT?
I'm assuming that you said
a bot.
A bot, yes.
Okay. Or you meant you meant Karl. Maybe he's a pretty hot guy.
So no, it takes medium. So a simple bot, a week to 2 weeks. A week to 2 weeks, sometimes even less. The example we saw in PTCOA with the lab claims, this was about 35 hours of development, and then the initial 15 hours of setting up the infrastructure, setting up the VM, doing all the connections that were needed between the control room and the robot. So about 35 hours of actual running the robot.
And what's the time between the first contact of a client for you to start working on a bot? How's that work? Maybe to even follow up on this question.
We can usually start right away. We can usually start analyzing, checking the application to see if it's a good fit for automation right away, and start development within a week.
All right, Mike, feel free to choose any of these.
Yes, we can definitely send these 4 videos. If you can just send us,
yeah, just send us and shoot us a mail
shoot us a
on
mail on
info@Flobotics.
info.
We'll be happy to share all of it. Oh, this is a hard question. Very
What
good.
is the
Very good
advantage
question.
over
Very good
big 4
question.
companies? Well, first of all, our prices are a lot lower than big 4 companies, and I don't see actually any disadvantages because most of our guys are from the big 4. So it's a win-win here.
What if we have our internal IT team? How long would it take them to learn RPA? Oh, this is another very good question, Mike. Thank you for that. How would you address that, Karl?
So it depends on the person, but generally IT people that are very technical are the ones that can be very good at RPA, but it kind of depends on their passion and how much they like RPA. From my experience, IT teams and companies that are told, hey, you have to learn RPA now, are going to learn slower. But in theory, you can be a pretty good RPA developer within 6 months.
All right. If you're a technical person.
If you're a technical person.
If you're a developer. All right. Thank you for that. That's plenty of questions and answers. Can bots process handwritten documents? That's a very good one. The short one is it depends, right?
Yeah, it always depends. But with handwritten documents, like I was saying earlier, the advances in technologies and optical OCRs, optical character recognition programs, they're getting better and better. Google AI, there's a bunch of other companies that are pretty good at doing this now. So it was 5 years ago, I'd say forget about it. Now I'd say it depends on how you write, how sloppy the handwritten writing is.
All right. So probably in 3 years, it's going to be just straightforward.
Yeah, exactly.
There's another one. Is there an option to use one license for many robots if they are not working simultaneously? Or is it one license for one robot? That's a super smart question.
This is a great question. So one robot does not mean one software bot. So basically it's one computer. So you have 20 hours of runtime. So if we write 6 robots that run for 4 hours each, one after another, this is one license.
Yeah, so we had cases when one license was responsible for 30-something processes. So it's not limited to different tasks to do. There is thank you. That was a very nice question, Sarah. Why pay for a robot license if I can use Python? Ooh, that's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I actually touched up on this earlier. Python is good for 1, 2, 3 solutions. The problem is when you get into situations where you need more robots. Now you need a control room. You need to signal these robots to start. They need to communicate with each other. You need statistics. You need just more control over them. You need an environment to actually host all of this and to be able to scale faster. Well, this is going to be hard with clean Python. It's going to be very, very time consuming. It's actually going to cost you more than the licenses.
Interesting. Oh, another one. Alex sent that question. Can I use free trial version to check if RPE works for me? Of licenses, I suppose, or of...
Of course. So our favorite ones are UiPath and RoboCorp. They have free trials. And that's pretty much what we recommend. That's what we like. That's what we see the best results in. But most of the RPA vendors have free trial licenses. Automation Anywhere, even Blue Prism has it now. So I think all of them you can try it for free to see if.
Yeah, that's a good way, because some companies, some company owners or directors don't really know if this is going to be something they will like. Then having a trial version, it's always...
Yeah, UiPath actually has 60 days enterprise trial for free, and in this you get loads of stuff. You get like 10 robots, 5 developers. AI bots, OCR engines. So you get a lot of things you can try out. Basically, their entire platform for 60 days.
All right. Hi. Can the robot communicate with other systems via API?
Of course. We didn't want to touch up on the very technical aspects in this presentation, but it's just programming actually with a nice cover on it. So any of this programming, API communication, reaching into databases, it could all be done.
Absolutely. So actually, when two systems communicate via API, it's just going to be cheaper for you because robots, you don't have to write the whole infrastructure, the whole understanding of what's happening on the screen. They just communicate easily. So that simplifies a lot.
Is there a significant difference between?
Is there a significant difference between RPA tool providers? How to choose the one that fits your needs? It's a hard one to answer in general, right? It probably again the best answer would be it depends.
But it depends on the preferences of the developers, because
What about
more or less they all do the same thing, more or less. Some are easier to use, some are more difficult to use, some have ugly layouts, some have nice layouts. So it depends on what the company is used to, what it likes, the developer community. So there are more popular tools, there are less popular tools, there are more expensive tools.
Can it be a case that one client has a very different needs and end up using a different solution than totally different client?
It could probably be done in multiple platforms the same way. It's just, maybe here the licenses are going to be cheaper, but here it takes longer to develop, and there are pros and cons to all of these.
They're basically hard to guess, but you have to just...
it's hard to guess, and it's always up to I guess the customer and the company that's recommending what they like to use.
All right. Do we have any other? Oh, yes, we do. Is it true that Phlebotomy is so awesome that it can cure cancer? Of course.
Oh man, I wouldn't say yes, but I'm not going to say no either.
Thank you for that too. We have a fanboy here.
Come on.
I wonder who this is.
Okay. Any more questions?
We missed one question.
One question?
It's Mr. Mike. We supposedly missed one question. I wonder what this is.
The first question: how the bots work with different EMRs?
How the bots work with different EMRs. Oh yeah, I see. How the bots work with different EMRs, especially if we don't have access to backend systems. Do you want to answer this, Karl?
Maybe the camera guy can answer this. This is a good question for him. No, I'm just joking. So we would have to see if there are APIs in place, or if they can even communicate outside. Most EHRs, some EHRs don't. So we just basically pull the information out of them and store them in a place together.
Well, it's important to say that
in a common database.
As we said before, it doesn't really matter what software the data is. RPA very often is used to move data from one system to another one.
Sometimes, especially if there's no APIs or the manufacturers of the application don't make it easy, which is a normal case actually. So RPA, we do migration from one system to the next when there's no easier way to do it, because some of these providers just don't want you to leave their platform.
Yeah, sometimes we had cases when a lot of systems had to communicate to each other, like 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is a mess for a human, but when you organize it well, robots cooperate very well. That was a very good question. Thank you. Another one. Our security policies require the data to be processed inside our organization. Is RPA software installed locally or in the cloud? That's a very good question, Chris. And I think they can be installed both way, Clara. Am I right?
Both.
I really
So,
wanted to answer at least one question here.
yeah, they can be installed in both ways. And if a company has these types of restrictions, most likely they're going to have the infrastructure to host the robot, right? So, and this is true for a company that doesn't have these restrictions, probably maybe doesn't have the infrastructure to host the robots. So they're just going to get Azure or Amazon or a different, virtual computer service.
Last question for me, guys. Can I use the same computer where robot will run, or there should be a dedicated computer for him or her?
So we can do.
I like that that robots are called him or her. I love it.
Without getting too technical, both are possible, but it's always preferred to run robots on their own environment, so we can control that environment. Because people change their computers, they change settings, I don't know, like download viruses or whatever. If we have a controlled environment, which only the robot works, then if something goes wrong, we can fix it easier and better because we know no one else tampered with this environment.
Yep, absolutely. I think we run out of questions. That was a long set of questions. I'm surprised. Thank you for all of them. If there is anything more you would like to ask, this is the best moment to do it. If not,
you can write on info@Flobotics.io anytime. If you write to us, we will give you links to schedule a meeting with me to talk about your process.
So you have a unique opportunity to talk to top 1 freelancer of robotic process automation.
I'm blushing.
Yeah, you should. And this is Karl. So use it for you. Use it as your advantage, and then get in touch with us. Thank you very much, for all of you, for coming. It was fun. I had a great time. I hope you guys had a lead.
I had a blast, especially the rapping part.
The rapping part was my favorite. So thank you guys, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye everybody.